What would Socrates say about modern relationships? In a world full of dating advice, tactics, and so-called attraction secrets, one voice would rise above the noise, not to tell you how to win others, but how to find yourself. If Socrates were alive today, he wouldn't teach you how to impress people. He wouldn't give you tricks to charm or lines to memorize. He would simply look you in the eyes and ask, "Do you know who you are? Or are you just trying to fit in?" That gaze would cut through the masks you've built to be liked. Today, many men think they have to shapeshift, to change who they are, to be loved. They believe that by pleasing others, they'll finally be accepted. But here's the truth, and this is where Socrates steps in. The more you try to please, the less you're respected. Socrates never tried to be liked. He didn't speak to satisfy others. He spoke to free himself. He asked questions that broke illusions, that tore down egos, and exposed the truth hidden behind the smiles. And this truth is uncomfortable, because many women, some knowingly, some unknowingly, don't want you to see this. They don't want you to see that a man who pleases too much loses himself. A man who keeps chasing approval loses his value, because real respect, real attraction, real connection, they are not created by effort. They come from presence, and presence can only exist when you are complete in yourself. When you know who you are deeply and no longer need validation to feel worthy. So, this video is not a guide to winning someone else. It's a reminder of the only victory that changes everything. Self-mastery. Socrates knew that this is the one success no one can take away from you. Let's begin with the truth that stings. The more you try to please, the less you're valued. It's hard to accept, but the more effort you put into being accepted, the more it shows a hidden wound. A wound that says, "I am not enough as I am." How many men live like they're always auditioning, carefully choosing their words, lowering their voice, avoiding strong opinions, saying yes when they want to say no, all because they think that pleasing is the fastest path to love. But this path is weak, and sooner or later, it breaks. The truth is, the more you try to be her ideal man, the more you walk away from the real man within you. And it is exactly that real man, the one with strength, clarity, presence, and even well-grounded imperfections, who truly attracts. Socrates said, "Know thyself." This wasn't just advice. It was a challenge to the idea of always adapting to others. Because when you know yourself, you don't sell yourself cheap. When you know yourself, you don't shrink to be loved. When you know yourself, you live with dignity, even if it costs you attention, approval, or even someone's company. That's the hard part. It's hard to see that when you stop trying to please others, they may leave. But what's harder is realizing that maybe they were never connected to the real you, only to the version you created to be accepted. A wise man sees that people-pleasing is a hidden addiction, a cycle where you give everything, your attention, your time, your energy, and still feel you have to try harder. But the more you give without boundaries, the more your value fades, because anything that's too available loses its mystery. Anything that's always a yes loses respect. This isn't about being rude, it's not about being cold. It's about stopping the begging and starting to live with truth and integrity. Sometimes, that begins with one act of courage. Stop chasing those who don't see your value. Because whether you notice it or not, people test you. They test how much you're willing to bend. These tests don't come as direct questions. They come as silences, delays, small games of distance and closeness. They come as quiet criticisms, little remarks meant to see if you'll break your own boundaries just to be liked. The test of presence and the power of indifference. People test you, even when they don't know they're doing it. They measure your steadiness, your center, your calm. And most of the time, these tests are not cruel. They're unconscious, but they serve a purpose. To find out what moves you. Do you live by what you believe, or do you twist yourself to be liked? This is the silent dance of emotional power, and many men are dancing without realizing they're not leading, they're being led. Socrates was unshakable, not because he was hard, but because he was clear about what mattered. He faced kings, crowds, critics, and never bowed for approval. He stood firm against games of ego and popularity. He didn't adjust his truth just to be accepted. So when a woman tests you, it's not always to harm you. Often, she's searching for something she can trust. If you give in too quickly, if you become desperate, if you change your words, your posture, your truth, just to get her back, what you show is not love, it's fear. And fear doesn't attract, it repels. The grounded man doesn't react out of panic. He doesn't rush to stop the fire of discomfort. He pauses. He breathes. He remembers, this test isn't about her, it's about him. How far will you go just to not be alone? And the further you're willing to go, the more you show that you don't have much within. You only get tested when your value still depends on someone else's approval. That's why Socrates would still be controversial today. He didn't play the game. He didn't accept the rules. He faced the world with honest, direct, deeply uncomfortable questions. And in his silence, strong, still, steady, the games of manipulation fell apart. People respect what they can't move easily. They respect what you haven't mastered yet. A presence that doesn't beg for attention, a man who doesn't speak louder to be heard, who doesn't walk faster to be seen. He just is, and that's enough. That's the man who gets true respect, even if others don't say it, even if they resist it, because he is rare, not arrogant, but scarce, kind, but not a pushover, firm, but not cruel. Most importantly, he is clear on what he allows, and what he never will. Socrates never sold his integrity. He welcomed discomfort, he endured silence, he accepted rejection. But he never betrayed his soul. He chose exile over submission, death over pretending. And that's why even his enemies respected him, not because he controlled others, but because he had already mastered himself. What many women respect most, even if they never admit it, is this inner foundation, this quiet line you won't cross, this no you don't shout, because you already said it with your presence, your silence, your decision to walk away the moment you feel disrespected. And this is where many men lose themselves. They think they must prove their worth, show more, give more, be sweeter, be more available. But in this attempt to please, they lose the very respect they're hoping to gain. Because respect never comes from the hunger to be loved. It comes from the courage to stay true to yourself, even if it costs you the attention of someone who never really saw you. And this, precisely this, is what many don't want you to realize. Because once a man finds this inner strength, he becomes too free to be controlled. This is the power of conscious indifference. There's a sharp difference between coldness and conscious indifference. Coldness hurts. It shuts down. It builds walls. But conscious indifference is not the absence of feeling. It's the presence of self-mastery. It's being able to feel but not drown. To love but not lose yourself. To care but not collapse. The Stoic man doesn't become numb. He just refuses to have his emotions hijacked by the changing winds of other people's moods and expectations. He does not live chasing compliments, approval, or validation. Choosing yourself, the power of being whole. The Stoic man doesn't depend on applause. He may feel love, he may care, but he doesn't beg for validation. He doesn't change his truth to win the game. And that changes everything. While many run after signals, little crumbs of attention, desperate for replies, the grounded man observes. He breathes. He stays centered. He knows that anything unclear is not worth chasing. He doesn't turn absence into obsession. He turns absence into space. And in that space, something powerful is born. Because when you stop chasing who she wants you to be, she starts to wonder who you really are. When you stop playing the nice guy, when you stop bending just to keep the peace and return to your center, your presence alone provokes curiosity. It silences noise. It intrigues. Socrates never competed for attention. He didn't need to speak loudly or show off. He earned respect through silence, questions, and presence. It wasn't force that made him powerful. It was clarity. It was the absence of need that made him irresistible, untouchable, uncontrolled. Conscious indifference is not carelessness. It is clarity. It's knowing you can love and still let go. You can feel deeply and still choose wisely. That kind of strength? That's what they don't want you to discover. Because if you have to hide your strength to be loved, then you're already betraying yourself. And self-betrayal doesn't make noise. It shows up in the man who grows quiet, not out of peace, but fear, who bends, not out of wisdom, but desperation, who adapts so much, he eventually forgets who he used to be before he tried so hard to be accepted. That's the most dangerous betrayal. When a man buries his strength, his clarity, his firmness, just to be loved, just to be a little less intense, just to be allowed to stay. And the issue is not loving too deeply. The issue is shrinking your truth to fit someone who is too afraid to handle a complete man. Socrates once said, "The worst form of injustice is to appear just without being so." And that hits hard in our world today, because many men look confident but live like beggars inside. They look strong but hide their opinions. They seem calm but walk on eggshells, terrified of being too much. They fear losing someone who never accepted their full truth in the first place, only the tamed version of them. But the Stoic man does not hide. He does not shout. He does not threaten. He holds his posture so firmly that the world understands his limits, because he knows. If you have to act small to be loved, you've already lost. If you have to ask to be respected, then you are not truly respected. When a man has to hide his strength to keep a woman, he doesn't have a relationship. He has a prison, and yes, he fears that the truth may leave him alone. But truth always sets him free. The right woman won't walk away because you are firm. She'll walk away if you abandon your own strength. True respect is born not when you're chosen, but when you choose to be whole, even if it costs you someone who only wanted a piece of you. That's why Socrates accepted exile. But he never accepted to live against his conscience. He didn't aim to please, he aimed to free. And there is a massive difference between being liked and being genuine, between being accepted out of comfort and being respected out of essence. Socrates was never a man of the crowds. He didn't chase applause. He didn't change his words just to sound sweet. He made people uncomfortable because he revealed. And those who reveal are rarely wanted, but they are almost always needed. Most women, and people in general, don't want you to find this power, because when you do, you become too free to control. They don't want you to know that real strength is not about being chosen. It's about choosing yourself, about being whole, even when they expect you to bend. Living in clarity, even when it means losing the company of those who can't handle their own light. The historical man holds silence, but not submission. He loves, but doesn't beg. He listens, but doesn't disappear. He might lose relationships, but he never loses himself in them. Socrates would leave you with just one question. A question you may avoid, but one that will echo inside you until you face your own truth. Are you living like a man, or the idea of a man they want you to be? That question burns, because it breaks the mask. And the Stoic man wears no masks. He carries scars. He stands with conviction, he lives with limits. And he never adapts just to be loved. He develops himself to become unshakable. And the further you walk in that direction, the less you need to be accepted. Because respect begins to follow you wherever you go. This is the truth they never wanted you to see. But now, it's right in front of you.